This episode is brought to you by Netflix. 3 couples, 4 vacations, a lot to unpack. Watch The 4 Seasons, a new series starring comedy favorites Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Will Forte, Coleman Domingo, and more in a hilarious and heartfelt love letter to long-term relationships. Based on the original Alan Alda film. Watch The 4 Seasons, May 1st, only on Netflix.
It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
Wheel of Fortune, Sally Ride, heavy metal, suicide, foreign debts, homeless vets, AIDS, crack, Bernie gets, hypodermics on the shore, China's under martial law, rock and roller, cola wars, I can't take it anymore. We didn't start the fire, it was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire.
Well, I hope Bernard Goetz gets royalties every time this song is played. Something tells me he may not. Obviously, the world is still dealing with the aftermath of the Daniel Penny case. And since this Penny case occurred, since the moment it began, since the grand jury indictment, and almost every day of this trial, people have been making some comparisons to the Bernard Goetz case that was December of 1984, 40 years ago this month. A man who can speak to those comparisons with some authority is Bernard Goetz himself, who, in addition to the incident on the subway, is a former candidate for mayor of New York City and a longtime animal rights activist. Bernie, it's great to talk with you again. Thanks for coming on the radio with me.
Okay, my pleasure.
So give me your reaction to the verdict initially. Were you surprised? I imagine you were in agreement with the jury.
I think it's a good thing, but Frank, I don't have anything profound to say about that verdict. I think this is about New York, and New York I consider a BS society. And what the Penny case has in common with my case is it's all BS. This is what you have in some democratic states with left-wing government. Dominic was saying, we don't know why Penny died. He was
why Neely died.
I'm sorry, why Neely?
Right.
Why Neely died? Excuse me. That he was on. He was apparently taking some kind of drug. If someone is screaming at people that he's going to kill them, someone is going to die, do you think that person is calm, or do you think their heart is racing? When this is a guy whose physiology is already very high strung, and and if Dominic says that he was arrested 40 times, that means that this guy had done, at minimum, the police say they say it's 5 times for every arrest. It's a minimum of 5 similar type of incidents. That means he did at least a few hundred things
right
over the past number of years, and he only got arrested 40 times. And
I remember when your case occurred, a magnifying lens got shown on the New York City subway system and how unsafe so many people felt at that time. How do you think the subway safety environment of the 80s compares to today? Are New Yorkers facing similar fears, or is this a fundamentally different time?
No. Many people are afraid because on the subways you have a lot of deranged people making threats. But the reality is there was much more violence in the 80s. It was a poorer society. We had a much greater percentage of the population preying on the rest of the population, and we don't have that now. The problems that people see somewhat on the street, but more so in the subway, is there's a lot of mentally disturbed people. People who they're wacky and they're probably off their meds, and I think you have society now that's out of touch. What my incident when you have political prosecutions, it doesn't work out. What my incident has in common in terms of shedding light on things, my incident 40 years ago, it was basically, it shed light on the high crime in New York and that New York City was failing as a city. And also, we had the government here was simply not addressing crime at the time. I believe the fundamental cause of my prosecution was there were no great legal questions to be answered or resolved. It was that Mario Cuomo was the leading contender for the presidential nomination in the for the Democratic presidential nomination in the U.S. And that is far more important than somebody shooting some muggers on the subway. And it was when Mario Cuomo was being promoted in some of the national media as and Mario himself was saying New York had successful policies to lift people up from poverty and stuff. In fact, New York was failing. And I went around saying on national TV that New York government was incompetent, inept, and corrupt. And I had nationally at the time, because it was such a big story, I had double the name recognition of Mario Cuomo.
That's incredible. Around the country, not just in New York either.
Around the country.
Bernie, let me ask you.
It basically ruined. It basically, he had the whole promotion of Mario Cuomo as a presidential candidate had been cultivated by major media here, particularly the New York Times and the Daily News. And then basically my incident threw a monkey wrench in that. I'd like to mention something else, too.
Sure.
In my case, they wanted my case to disappear. And I did a lot to bring this on myself. After my case was dismissed by the first grand jury, my attorneys told me to keep quiet. But after a few months, or after a period of time, I started doing stuff with Roy-Innes and saying New York government. When I started to talk to the media as incompetent, inept, and corrupt, I wanted the city to give out 20,000 pistol permits to the public. And I said, for example, if a person has been a cab driver for 5 years and they don't have a criminal record, they should get a pistol permit if they request it. By the way, that 20,000 figure is the same number John Catsimatidis suggested.
I heard that. I took note of that.
And it's probably just a coincidence. But the political establishment here just wanted my case to disappear, and I didn't know when I had it good. I probably should have kept my mouth shut. Another thing, too, the public law, the legal system, when you have it should be a truth-seeking process. Trials should be based on seeking the truth, and it's to make, ideally, a legal system is to make a system work, that wrongdoing should be published. But in many countries, not so much the U.S., but here, sometimes when you see lawfare, you see that the law is used not so much to protect the public, but simply to impose the will of the people who are running the legal system, or really the political, because the political people run the legal system, and that when you have, that's what my case was, and that's what you have here. This is a political trial.
Bernie, obviously,
it's not good for society. I think you talk about sickness and about this guy who killed the CEO. Dominic said it's a sick society. He may be it may not be as sick as he says, but mankind has been struggling to get out of the jungle. People didn't even have indoor plumbing until 1900. Here in New York City, the first place to have indoor plumbing was the Plaza Hotel about the year 1900.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly a positive development. But Bernie, if you when your incident occurred, you were not even 40 years old. Obviously, Daniel Penny is a young man. He's in his 20s. He's going to have to live the rest of his life with a lot of people still viewing him somewhat negatively. A lot of people viewing him also as a hero. If Daniel Penny were listening now, and I know his lawyer listens to this program, and who knows, he may be listening now, what advice would you give him about navigating life after such a polarizing and public incident?
Now, that's a good question, because this may change his life a lot. He's been in a unique position. You don't really appreciate how much BS goes on until you're in the inside of in some type of high publicity type of situation, and he's gone through this. He may have some good insights as he grows older. The incident changed my life a lot. I think for the better. I mean, it wiped me out financially and stuff, but one thing leads to another, and it led on to a lot of good things. Neely had a different approach than I did. He listened to his attorney. I'm sorry. I mixed them.
Sure.
I mixed them.
Right. Just to be clear.
Penny had a different approach. He probably listened to his attorney's advice, who said, "Just keep your mouth shut." And because anything you say, it basically can't help you. And people who are trying to hurt you or prosecute you, they'll grasp at straws, anything to try to get you. And so the public, and if your listeners want to understand what kind of baloney goes on, when, again, the trial should be a truth-seeking process. My trial was not. I hired the right attorney for the job. Barry Slotnick knows how to win. And when you're dealing with a dishonest district attorney, which my case was, a guy like Barry Slotnick is the best guy to deal with them. Because Barry will win one way or another. Okay, the district attorney in my case, for people who follow it closely and know what was going on the inside, he was trying to mislead and confuse the public and the jury, even during the trial. It was not a search for the truth. And if you want to know how I look at the trial and how people on the inside look at the trial, when we finished 6 months of jury selection, and the first day when we went to the trial was going to start, Frank King, who was an assistant to Barry Slotnick, and boy, there are stories about Frank King, but he was sitting next to me, he said, "Bernie, I'm going to tell you two things that I tell every one of our clients prior to trial." He said, "The first thing is, this is all a show, and we have to put on a better show than the prosecution." And then he said, "And the second thing is the game is hardball." Okay.
ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track, and ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Principles. Are there limits to the U.S. government's debt growth? What will happen if the debts are not curtailed? What should policymakers or investors do? Those are urgent questions that legendary investor and New York Times bestselling author Ray Dalio addresses in his new book, How Countries Go Broke: The Big Cycle. The book comes out in June and is available for pre-order today, wherever books are sold.
That moment when you realize your skincare is actually working. That's Rodan & Fields, the #1 female dermatologist-founded skincare brand in the U.S. Designed by 2 dermatologists who don't just know women's skin, they know how to formulate for it. Rodan & Fields, love what you see. Tap the banner or visit rodanandfields.com/Spotify to get your exclusive welcome offer.
Impact confirmed. The Slayer has been activated.
Demonic threat level increasing.
Hold the line!
All the power of hell cowering before one man.
id Software presents Doom, The Dark Ages. Available now on Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, and PC.
Rated M for mature.
A lot of people at the time, and I'm sure to the present day, called you a vigilante, and similar language has been used to describe Daniel Penny. Do you think it's fair to label either of you that way, or is it a misunderstanding of self-defense?
Vigilante, well, I don't know. They take me. I was on that train going down. The reason I was on that subway back then.
You go to a Christmas party, right?
Well, I was going to meet some people prior to Christmas, correct. And I was in a rush because I was running late, and I would normally walk because I had tons of energy back then, like Curtis Sliwa. Maybe not as much as him, but I would walk from 14th Street going down to Warren Street. That was down near the World Trade Center. And I would stop by Canal Street, look in some of the stores, and that's how I would normally go. And it would take me an hour to go down there because I'd be stopping on the way. But I was already late, and so I grabbed the train. I took the subway down, figuring it was one express stop, and that was going to be it. And in terms of being, a vigilante, I was on that. 10 seconds after the door closed on the train, I was shooting within 10 to 15 seconds. Wow. But what the media does, and what the labels the media call, it's irrelevant. My allies at the time in the media, and the media was much worse back then than today. People think, there's so much lies in the media today. Well, back then, people didn't know how they were being manipulated. Well,
I was going to ask you about that. So the media played a significant role, as you point out, in shaping public perception of your case. Do you think the media today has more power to influence outcomes, or has the rise of social media shifted that balance a bit?
What you mean in terms of legal outcomes? That depends on the ethics of the legal system in any particular state. In a state like New York, basically, we had an ethical judge, but the judge it's clear Judge Crane was intimidated by Mario Cuomo, as were most people. And he later became a Supreme Court judge here in New York, as were most people in New York, because Mario Cuomo had such a powerful reputation that was fostered by the New York Times and the Daily News, and so it depends. So in terms of the power that the media has, the media had a kind of absolute power back in the 80s. Remember, the Spanish-American War? You had the Hertz.
Right. Yeah. William Randolph Hearst said, "You provide the pictures, I'll provide the war."
I'll provide the war and stuff. The New York Times was the paper of record. Now, an article in the New York Times really isn't that important, because what is the public record now? The public record is the internet. For every one person that reads the New York Times, 1,000, 10,000 get their information from the internet, and so the media is. For example, I had no recourse but to try to work with the New York Post, and that was awful. The New York Post was awful. To work with these people are awful. All the media back then. I mean, if you talk to people, they change your wording. Mm-hmm. They and you know what they would do with editing? they would have the person, you do an interview, and then they edit the question they're asking you differently with what gets aired. It was amazing, the things that were going on. I had no idea what I was getting into. I knew there was media manipulation and stuff going on, but I really didn't understand how it worked. But back then, still to it today, but to a much lesser extent, but back then, the media was much more powerful. I think 10% of the economy in New York City, or 10%, was people were employed in the media. The media was much bigger. And who did the media work with? The media worked with government. The politicians needed the media because that was the only way to reach the people. And the media needed the politicians, and the media would get all kinds of special favors. And now, of course, you had the media isn't that important anymore. In fact, Andrew Cuomo, for many years, for the past 10 years, it seems, he treats the media like crap. It used to be if you owned a newspaper, anyone who owned a newspaper, you'd be invited to every important gala and function and everything. And the politicians sucked up to the media, and they gave the media special privileges. You wanted a pistol permit. You wanted connections to find an apartment. There were a lot more rackets. People were doing a lot more rackets in 1980. The New York was much poorer. The country was much poorer. I think the internet has greatly increased the economic well-being of the whole world. Of course, you can find you can find people deliberately misleading people on the media today. But that, I think that happened. That was probably worse in the prior to the internet, because the people, when they did tell lies and mislead people, the public had no way of knowing it.
Bernie, just moving from the media to the subway situation, do you think New Yorkers today are more or less likely to intervene in an incident than they were during your day?
Oh, people generally, you were pretty much on your own in my day. And today things are different. The crime is nothing like, you have to remember, all the real violent guys, the recidivists, the violent offenders, repeat violent people we had a revolving door justice system, and you couldn't keep the records. When I was locked up in the Brooklyn House of Detention, I saw the type of record. They kept records in the jails of something, and all records on everybody was on paper. It was a giant, confused mess. Today, as Sammy Gramano said, cameras are everywhere. You can't get away with anything. If they want to get you, they'll get you. I'm surprised it took so long to catch this.
So was I. This Mangione. Luigi Mangione. So am I. Bernie, last question about this. When you, obviously, your case has been a focal point of the 1980s and of the criminal justice system, and Penny was acquitted by a jury. Given what you said about political prosecutions and DAs that may play fast and loose with the facts for the sake of a show, do you think the jury system is still the best way to handle cases that draw so much public and media attention?
Oh, geez. I think, to start with, you need ethical prosecutors. And by the way, the prosecutors probably wound up, many of them, being unethical because the dirty tricks that the attorneys continually play. I mean, why do you think, I had Barry Slotnick, why do you think organized crime would go, they would use Barry Slotnick a lot? Why? Because of his high...
Right, they wanted to win.
Great attorney, but... Exactly.
Yeah, no.
And they simply a matter of fact of you want to win. In my case, it was simply... Barry simply wants to win every case he has. And he doesn't care how he does it. Now, guess what? The prosecutor in my case was the same way. but he was a lot slicker in misleading the public, and he thought because he had the political establishment and the media backing him, he could get away with it. But it all blew up in his face. I was in huge trouble until the guys I shot started doing other crimes.
Right.
And then people started realizing, well, it's kind of odd that these people are doing crimes, and someone says they were in the process of mugging them when, so you need a truth-seeking process. You need responsible people, and in the justice system. In my trial, I had a good talk with the foreman of the jury in my case about 6 or 8 months ago. We talked for several hours.
Oh, really?
Actually, about the trial and things, and I was explaining to him certain things that were going on. I think he believed me on most things. I told him some things which I know he considered a little outrageous and weird, and he also told me a few things which I prefer to keep quiet about, which are mind-boggling to me. But what became clear to me in talking to him, and he wrote a book also, which I read, when we had witnesses testifying there, either their witnesses were testifying for us or against us, this and that, the jury saw many things correctly, which I thought was pretty good. They saw the forensic evidence correctly. But there was quite a number of incidents when people were telling the truth, and some of the jurors decided they were lying when they were telling the truth. And there were some cases where people were lying, and the jurors concluded they were telling. Well,
they're human, right? I mean, that stands to reason. Bernie, I have to go.
I don't have a good answer. A jury system can protect you from government, basically. But anyway, okay.
Bernie, let me, if you can answer this in 30 seconds, and I know that might be unfair. I know you're a fan of squirrels. This is the first time we've had the chance to speak since Peanut the squirrel was euthanized by New York State. A lot of people view this as a major scandal. I'm assuming you do as well.
Oh, New York State. Don't expect any moral. Mario Cuomo had no talent. He had no answers for America, for him to run for president. New York government does not set an example on any level to make a better, generally to make for the rest of the nation. I shouldn't say to make a better world. They have it backwards. If anything, people should be taking care of the animals more and be involved in people's lives. You can't just say, oh, the public can't do it. If you let the public do it, people can organize and learn from each other. Many zoos treat animals atrociously, and they don't even begin to know what to do. I sent you some pictures a few years, 3 years ago maybe, about some violent chimpanzees. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I still have those.
Those horrible pictures. That came from a zoo out in the Midwest where they had more than 30 of these chimpanzees locked up in the same facility, a big, huge open area where you saw them threatening and fighting each other. And then they had some little stalls and stuff they could run in. They couldn't get away from each other. You have an overpopulation condition. And what happens when you have a restricted environment like that? Only the most violent, aggressive males are the ones who breed and survive. That's been a problem in evolution, that the gentlest and nicest, gentlest creatures don't survive generally in nature, and the most aggressive, biggest ones are the ones that survive. You may have noticed those huge testicular sacs on those chimpanzees. By the way, and what you saw, that thing was built like that 80-pound chimpanzee could rip you or I apart without even trying.
I don't doubt it. Bernard Goetz, it's great to talk with you. Thanks for keeping in touch, and thanks for listening to this program and giving me your feedback regularly. I know you get a lot of requests for interviews. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Yeah. By the way, the media is generally, if you talk to the media, it's like going into a public smelly toilet. there's, you're okay because, Frank, like I said, I told you in an email, you try to be honest, which is, and also this is unedited, so.
Exactly. Try to be honest. That's all that we can do. Bernie, thank you. I'll see you soon, I hope. Take care. 646-720-0635. If you care to comment, this is The Other Side of Midnight. Straight ahead.